I have this terrible problem that I cannot, I have difficulty speaking loudly, so I'm going to do my best, and feel free to interrupt me at any point. I would always prefer to be more conversational. I know that everyone says that and then they talk about 2 hours, but let's try to have a conversation, maybe some questions and response, and try to be, because also like what I'm gonna talk about is kind of, I see it as a work in progress. I see my practice as a work in progress, the questions I have, so yeah, feel free to jump in and have any thoughts that you think might contribute. So I'm really happy being here, both in SAHA and Istanbul, for many reasons. Because first of all, you know, I've been to Istanbul many times, but with the eyes of a tourist and family, you know, having this cultural intimacy and being so close geographically. I think you have also similar experiences probably with Greece. But it's nice to be here actually with the kind of more art community background and sphere and eyes. But also to be here in SAHA specifically and to be lucky enough to have seen some portfolios so far, but also to actually now match the work with the faces of all of you. And I'm here to meet actually as many artists as possible and, you know, the whole art community in Istanbul. And third, which is kind of urgent at the moment for me and important, is that, you know, I'm really happy to be in Turkey right now instead of in Greece or in Europe with what's happening in the world. So I'm really, it's nice to feel this intimacy in moments like this. So I'm going to give you a bit of background for me, just to kind of, you know, personal trauma story, so you can get a sense of where I'm coming from as well. I started working in the arts the last like 12 years ago. It was a moment where in Greece, I don't know if you're familiar, but it was a moment where the contemporary art world was something very exclusive. I mean, this is debatable, but it was way more. And there were not much opportunities, there were not much interest, there was not much kind of a crowd around the contemporary art scene in Greece. And then it started, like, especially mainly because of the private foundations, that it started popping up during and after the Greek financial crisis. Then it started, you know, the scene kind of changed and boomed, and, you know, more and more project spaces started, artist-run spaces, you know, the whole ecology started to be actively in Athens, more than any other place in Greece. So I started in that moment working with foundations, institutions, museums, without knowing much of what I want to do, but I knew that this is the field kind of for me. I remember actually, because Ivona Blaswick is coming next week, I was sitting in a dinner back then, 12 years ago, next to her for some reason, and she was like, "What do you want to become?" I was like, I don't know, but I feel that I'm in the right path. And she was like, "Yeah, that's all you need right now." And it's interesting how, like, all of these positions that you take shift and have different kind of perspectives depending on the context you're operating in. So I worked in Athens for the first like 4 or 5 years. I was working for a foundation there called Neon, I think it is the Scalopoulos mainly. And then after a while I thought that I really needed a change. It felt that Athens was very limiting for me. I grew up there, was born there, so it felt that I want to do a change in my life. And I was like, I'm going to wait for Documenta to happen, and then I'm going to leave. So in 2017, I moved to London. I started working there first at the National Portrait Gallery. I hated it. Too bureaucratic, too big, too British. Didn't work at all. And then I decided to continue my studies, so I started the Royal College of Art, curating, and then started working as an independent curator there. Then COVID started, and I was in London. I passed all of this period in London, and kind of it felt, you know, all of this kind of border-oriented mentality that it started, that, you know, countries started to actually care only about themselves, and, you know, you could see how these kind of policies started to open up around this specific aspect. And also Brexit happened during that time. So all of this kind of energy made me reflect on what I want to do, for whom, what's my purpose. And I wanted to actually, I felt that it was a moment for me that I want to contribute to, you know, if we really want to talk about change, whether it's social, cultural, or political, I felt that I should go beyond the creative sphere, I should go beyond the institutional spaces where, you know, you see the same crowds, and to actually go to places that they haven't experienced that before. And so that's why I'm going to talk today mainly about the institution that I founded in 2021 called DEO Projects, which is located on Chios, on this island, very close to Chios. Some of you, anyone have been to Chios before? Yes, that's nice. That I don't have to explain what Mastika is. And my mother is from there, and I used to go, like, you know, inviting friends, artists, to spend time with me for holidays. And I could see that for them, they want you to stay longer to do research, to produce works. Because Chios is very interesting as a place. It has very diverse landscapes, it has very diverse communities that coexist. Of course, you know, it's one of the islands with the refugee crisis, has been impacted. It has many Turkish communities there. There are kind of a local community that work in the agriculture, and then there is a really big industry of shipping. Like, shipping industry of Chios is one of the biggest in the world. So, like, imagine any island, Greek island you have in mind, nothing to do with that. Like, no white houses, no tourism, nothing around that. And it doesn't feel also this wealth that there is on the island. It's an island, as I say, that it's been traumatized, and it has traumatized others. So for me it was really important to create an institution that somehow embraces all of those diverse communities. How you do that, how you start creating an audience for that, and create a, let's say, safe space or inclusive space, supporting all of those vulnerable communities that there are there. So yeah, so the main kind of goal for DEO was to support transnational dialogue and to build or contribute to on building the cultural infrastructure of the island. So we started with a residency program, which is called Commission Series, still running, in 2021, which is a production-based two-month artist residency, where the artists come for 2 months. They do research together with archaeologists, sociologists, historians, guides, depending on the artist's research. They produce on the island, and then we have their first solo show in Greece. This started with a Brazilian artist called Pijota. It's really funny now that during COVID we invited a Brazilian artist, which was the most difficult thing to do, to bring them into Europe, but it worked in the end. And I must say that the island doesn't have a permanent venue, so we do projects and exhibitions across the island, activating different kind of venues on different places of the island. So for Paulo, we use the slaughterhouse, which exists in Chios. It's run by a volunteer group for forest protection. You can see some images here. Then in 2022, the program continued with Dominic White, an artist from the UK who lives in Marseille, and we used another venue, some horse stables. Dominique's work is around the nautical myths of the Caribbean and the colonial practice and how this. So for me it was important because I'm going to go to the funding of the organization, but obviously the majority comes from these shipping families. So for me it was really important to go against the kind of dominant narratives of the shipping industry and what the shipping industry includes. So it was on purpose I invited Dominique to create these works. Here's some installation photos of your show. And for the third year we invited Saskia Calderon. It was the first artist from Ecuador. We did for the first time an open call process in partnership with EHF, which is a foundation in Guayaquil in Ecuador. She is a lyrical singer and performer, and for her it was interesting to find stories from an asylum that has been. It was kind of the first asylum of the 18th century, one of the first in Europe, and Saskia found some poems from the people there in Greek, and she actually creates songs in Greek, and she sang in Greek as well. So it was kind of a lot about pain and kind of trauma, I guess. And then started with this residency. I thought that, for me, I didn't want to repeat patterns of hospitality in the arts and thinking of inviting only international artists to come to Greece, but then what happens into the Greek scene and how you support Greek artists in the Greek scene. So I started, I feel that these years, the first years of DEO, it's some kind of pre-institutional phase where I try different things, different projects every time, different models, to see what works best for whom, and to see also how you can work with the seasonality that exists so far on the operation of the organization. So we continued a lot with commissions, moving to the public sphere. So we had some public art interventions. Here is one by a Greek collective called Serpis Maritime. On Chios you can find these watchtowers across the island, which was for pirate protection. And the watchtower, like there was a person there working, and when they would see some kind of piracy happening, they would turn a fire at the top, so the people, the villagers, can know that the danger is coming. So the collective reenacted kind of this act by doing a video projection on the watchtower. And then we had a live performance by Ravi SS, another British artist, who invited the locals to write notes around their relation to the sea, to all of those kind of history, but from a kind of social, general public perspective. And then he kind of transmitted that into a live performance. And then I was really keen to how you bring communities, local communities on board, and how kind of, you know, because there's always this question that comes to me at the end, usually from curators, how the locals engage with the art, you know, do they feel that they understand it, or, you know, do they feel weak, or do you even care about those audiences? And usually the answer that I say is that, you know, there's, I think in the art world there is this preconception or hierarchies around what is allowed to be presented in the centers and what is allowed to be presented in the peripheries. So you are used to see more kind of exhibitions, programming in the centers, and then you expect some kind of community projects in the periphery. So how you actually minimize those preconceptions and how you bring those audiences without compromising the work. And I think that the audience, actually the locals, or, you know, this kind of what we call general public, apart from the fact that they might not be able to use the art speak, you know, a work, an exhibition can actually touch and create an experience and a feeling. So I think this is the most important thing. But we also did something that I think is a community project, which was we went to a village in the north of Chios, and it was again with Sakız Maritime, this collective. And this village has a maritime history. However, because they didn't have ship owners, they had only sailors, their stories were excluded from the dominant narratives that exist in the museums, nautical museums on Chios. So they didn't feel included in the kind of wider narrative. So what we did, we went to a small venue they just opened, and in dialogue between the artist and the local cultural association of the villagers, we put together artworks together with artifacts from their collection and their stories. So it's interesting how, for me it was interesting how the same people who funded these nautical museums, and they didn't include their story, now through art I could use their money to tell their story. So it's interesting how you play with this kind of dynamics of funding and, you know, to use in your favor. Here again some images from there. Here is kind of the oops. And it's not Mercury retro. Here is like the artist together with the locals from the association and the artist and the architect here. And then thinking of how you build cultural infrastructure and how you know, it was important for me to engage some kind with the learning aspect. So, but at the same time, because we operate within this spring-summer season still, we have to work within that time frame. So we don't have school visits and stuff like that. So we started these educational summer workshops, which is basically new workshops for kids, usually aged 6 to 12, that they engage with contemporary artworks from the shows. A paid internship, so how you kind of create access to a young audience to work in a cultural institution. Year-round support on young talent, I'm going to go through on that in a bit. And we collaborate also with Metadres organization, which is an NGO that is responsible for unaccompanied minors or refugees or immigrants in Chios. And we create ways to create opportunities within the cultural sphere with them. So here is a workshop from the educational workshops that I mentioned. This is an artist that from this current show we had just now, who passed away a month ago. So it was very emotional to me as well. It's the Akis. Here is this is Here is the young talent support. So we started this initiative very kind of grassroots, like a director of a school called me and said, we have this kid, she's coming from a low-income, vulnerable family on Chios. She's super talented, she wants to do painting and drawing, can you support? And we're like, of course, and we spoke with, this is our educational manager, and we started this initiative that we support children all year round with, classes, art classes. We invest a lot on press because it's important to create not just, we try to expand the opportunities for the artists, of course for the organization as well, but whatever happens, this island we want as much exposure as we can, so we invite international and national journalists to come and visit the shows. Here we have Turkish media that is coming up soon. It's not up yet, but it's going to be a really long one, so I'm really looking forward to it. Here some national media. And now we move to the show that we just finished, where we're doing. So last summer we opened a show called My Past is a Foreign Country. It was located within the Chios castle, which is in the center, and was the area where the Ottomans used to live on Chios. So we collaborate with Chios Separate of Antiquities to borrow two venues, the Turkish baths, here is an image from there, and a temenos, a mosque, Hamidian. The interesting part for me was kind of, for this show, maybe let's go here, well, here as well, was how, this kind of genealogy of the monuments, and how, this, we call this a bath, we call the other venue a mosque, but in reality it's way more complex. Like, the mosque was built on a Catholic church from the previous era, then became a mosque, then during the big earthquake of Chios in 1991, it was destroyed, it was praying time, so we had many victims inside. And then Abdul Hamid rebuilt the mosque to honor its victims. And then during the exchange of populations between Asia Minor refugees and people from Chios, they were used as kind of refugee camps from the refugees, both venues. So for me it was interesting how we deal with monuments, what narratives they tell, and this, what I call monumental taxidermies, of how these two venues exist only because they are monuments. They couldn't exist as a mosque. This couldn't exist as a bath. So for me, it was interesting to bring all of those stories into the surface. So I invited artists from Greece, Turkey, Lebanon, Iran, and Cyprus to talk about all of those histories and to create new works. Here we have Hera's work, Hera Yukasyan. I'm never going to say her surname right. Where she created a new commission. She revisited one of the pieces that she had made in a hammam 10 years ago, and she remade a new kind of intervention out of it. Of course, the element of water is very prominent into the piece, but also she used this fabric, which is, I think it's called tulupi, which is for scrubbing your body, and then soap. And for Hera, for me, what was interesting with the conversations we had together was, for her, soap is a material that is very linked to memory for her, how malleable and soft it is in the beginning, like memory, and then as we as time passes, then becomes petrified, just like how monuments exist and what stories they want to tell. So it was a really nice collaboration. And then we have here Ican's volume, where he created a new work inspired by the baths and the kind of queer desire and what, again, what stories can have been excluded from the idea of the bath, especially in the Greek context, and how you bring through a poem. I don't have the poem with me, it was in Turkish, but it was a really nice poem. I can send you the lyrics afterwards. And here is a kind of images from the mosque. And for me it was interesting, we started working on the proposal from since last August. We knew all of these stories of the monuments, but then the Turkish earthquake happened, and we started talking, out of this solidarity with the artists and talking back and forth. It was interesting how, a moment of history from Chios now come in a link with the history of current Turkey. How the refugee crisis of the Asia Minor comes with the refugee crisis now happening in Chios. And for me, all of those kind of moments that cross over between the past and the present was very important for the show. And here we had two artists, Akis Kokkinos, who is the painter with these red paintings, and Mara Michalakakos, who is the artist with the red velvet installation. Here is some more images. And here's of his work, which have this kind of ambiguous expressions and that somehow reflect what has, all of those communities that use the space at some period of the time in the past. Okay, here is like this, of course, at least. And now we're moving into finding a permanent venue to host more kind of research-based residencies, an exhibition venue but without losing the nomadic character. And we are building a board, because the idea is to move into a year-round programming. And I'm just going to finish because now, after Istanbul, I'm going to New York for a fellowship at the Guggenheim. And it's interesting, I wouldn't say funny because it's not funny right now, but it would be funny when I have a kid. Because my research is about, the research that I'm going to do was about how, what position, thinking of global, of big museums, let's say international museums that could collect global art. I had this interest of how, coming from this actual exhibition, but what position do we want museums to take, and what their ethics in decision making when they collect global art, but thinking of collecting artists from countries with geopolitical intensity. So what is it neutrality, what we want from museums? Is a public statement the best way to support a community? And how much freedom a museum has within this case? So, all of these questions, I was coming here and I was writing on my phone more questions that were coming up, when a museum acquires an artwork, does that mean that it embraces what represents? Some museums take positions just as nations do over socio-political matters. Do institutions support overlooked voices, or they follow the pathway of its financial supporters? How much freedom of speech the museums have? All of these questions that they become more and more relevant, and that's why for thought, or maybe you have already some ideas and thoughts that I hope it's a free space to talk about without the need to talk about the, trying to keep the diplomacy or not, I don't know. But it's just what I have in mind, and I couldn't give a talk without touching upon these issues. Thank you.
Could you talk a little bit about the infrastructure of DEO, or how it is turning, or how it was and stuff like that?
Yeah, infrastructure you mean in terms of premises? Or
as in because we saw several different things, but who, the team or the whole infrastructure of the institution, is it possible?
yes.
Call it an institution?
So it started in 2021. It started very DIY. Me calling a friend to loan me money to open the organization, as a non-profit, and then the residency program. I had this idea that I wanted to invite, apart from the artist, a young patron, international patron, that they don't acquire any work of the artist, they just support financially the project, but we become a small team and we develop the project together. So the patron, the artist and myself, we work towards the development of the project. So in that way, I could see that the artist and the patron usually connect, and it's a relationship that it continues after. Usually, one way or the other, they acquire a work, but not through DEO. So there is kind of support, but properly without the need of the artist giving something back. Because when I started this residency, I was like, I don't want the artist to have any, to have to give back something. So in that way also, because it was COVID and institution, finding bodies was a bit crazy at the moment. So it was, for me, important to give artist fees, production budget, research budget, hospitality budget, without merging all of them together. So whenever an artist comes to Chios, it's really important that they get as much as we can offer, and we prefer to do smaller projects if we don't have the money, but there's no way that someone's going to work for free. And always the work remains to the artist. We don't get any commission. Then we started building a patron circle, the one that I showed you before, which funds DEO and allow us to create all of those programs. It's a very small team. Now it's me and a project manager, and hopefully now in 2024 we're going to be 3 people, and it's developing very slow in terms of because it's in Greece. I don't know how the funding works here, but in Greece there's no kind of what's like Arts Council in the UK, that there is a national portfolio where non-profits get the operational costs fixed, and you have to, there's no DEO has one of the biggest budgets in the independent non-profit spaces in Greece, and we are still not sustainable 100%. So you can imagine how it works. But now we're this in 2024. We're gonna get a venue, as I said before, to have offices, the team workshop spaces, and residency facilities, and then so we can also create programs around the year, which are going to focus more on, within the winter, it's going to focus more on local artists, supporting education, access into the arts, career paths in the arts, things like that. And then keeping the like the group shows and the more kind of international view for the summer. And these were like, because in the beginning it was solo shows in the summer, and now last year's experience was, it felt that the group show is actually way better, it's less stressful for an artist to create something better.
I have a hypothetical question, but if I haven't missed anything, would it be desirable for you as DEO to start to build a collection from these artists coming and showing, producing?
I've thought a lot about it. I don't think I have worked a lot around with curatorial proposals around collections, and because I've worked with collectors in the past, but also thinking of national collections and what they represent. I don't think it's, in our case at least, but also I believe that for museums, that it's a sustainable way of thinking. I think thinking of contemporary art. I truly believe in this kind of more ephemeral, more the intervention of what we do. We are in our thinking is to create this cultural park, but without acquiring the works, again in a more temporary way of operating. Because thinking of the storage issues and how much, of how much is being seen and how how it works, I don't think that it's the way, at least for us, to go towards. And it's also, it's not I don't see DEO as a museum. I see it more as an institution, more kind of to create knowledge production or at least discussions, and to create this safe space that will have a direct social and cultural impact, rather than to create a legacy or a narrative out of the collection. I'm quite critical with collections, let's say. You have a question? That's it.
Thank
we
you.
can continue.
Thank you.
We have lost 10 minutes maximum of our open session. Okay, this is the end of the first call.